Thank you, Chairman Graham, Ranking Member Leahy, and thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Great to be with you again. As you reference in your written testimony, there is an important opportunity for us together to build a development finance institution through something called the BUILD Act, the Better Utilization of Investments Leading to Development Act, which actually passed out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee yesterday by a 20-to-1 vote, has strong bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, and has been welcomed by the administration. And in a late revision, the Secretary of State will be the chairman of the board of the new institution. So please tell me, if you would, how this new International Development Finance Corporation will be a tool in the toolkit for the State Department, for USAID, for our government overall to pursue development in the world, and how you see it as a component part of advancing our interests and values in the developing world.
Thanks, Senator Coons. Thanks for the question. So it doesn't replace any of the other things. It's not intended to eliminate other actions, other humanitarian assistance, other development assistance that we're providing. It is, but it does fundamentally reshape how we think about it and how our organization thinks about it. It means we have to rise to the occasion too. It won't be the first time, but it'll be the first time, I think, in a strategic and coherent way. We work to bring private sources of capital to bear alongside the government assistance. Certainly U.S. Resources, but resources from other countries as well, where we strategically identify targeted needs for development. We identify the kinds of capital that they need. It's not always the case they need a grant. It's not always the case that a loan will work. There are lots of different structures that can be achieved. And what I think the BUILD Act accomplishes, it gives us the flexibility to identify a development need, bring to bear the right resources over the right time period, and manage it in a way that effectively delivers the outcome and measures it all along the way.
I look forward to working with you should it be enacted as we implement this new tool. When President Trump signed the executive order ending separation of children and families at the border, it didn't end the ongoing crisis in Central America that's one of the real drivers of families fleeing the chaos of 3 countries in Central America. Chairman Graham, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that an editorial from my friend and predecessor, Vice President Biden, be entered into the record. As the former Vice President lays out, unless we address the root causes of migration from Central America, any solutions focused solely on border protection and immigration enforcement will most likely be insufficient. And repeatedly, the administration has proposed slashing aid to Central America. It's fallen nearly 20%. From $750 million in 2016 to just over $600 million this year. Do you agree, Mr. Secretary, that a renewed focus on the Northern Triangle countries of Central America, which together represent the overwhelming number of migrants seeking to cross our southern border, is necessary to address this problem? And will next year's budget reflect that increased priority? And when the Vice President travels to Guatemala this week, does he plan to revive diplomatic and aid efforts to support the U.S. strategy for engagement in Central America?
The answer to your second question is yes. The answer to your first question, and I think Senator Lankford asked a similar question, I don't think the region's been lacking for American financial support. I think we've provided an awful lot of financial support to them over the past years, well-intended, and I'm sure some of it effective. So I'm not certain what the right number is to ask for financial assistance down there. What I think is more important is that we ensure that that there's an outcome that we can deliver. I am not convinced today, if you said, Secretary, you've got 2 times or 3 times as much money and you can spend it next year, that we could effectively deliver an outcome that would achieve what you're describing. I agree with the hypothesis of your question is right. If we don't resolve those issues in those 3 countries, we're going to have challenges along our southern border for years and years to come.
And I think it's important that we continue to meet our legal and treaty obligations, and if possible, by having a better access to opportunities to apply for asylum, for refuge at our embassies in these 3 countries, rather than having families risk this very long and dangerous trek. I hope we can make progress on that. Let me ask a last series of questions. I know Senator Murphy was also asking about recent press statements by Ambassador Bolton and reporting that strongly suggest President Trump's planning to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. You know, on June 8th, DNI Coates warned Russia is attempting to influence our 2018 midterm elections this coming November and to divide the transatlantic alliance. He pointed out Russia has meddled in elections in France, Germany, Norway, Spain, Ukraine, and has otherwise overtly or covertly tried to divide the NATO alliance and to interfere with our allies. Will Russian election interference in the United States and in a way that has harmed our key NATO allies be a focus of this summit with President Putin and a focus of the upcoming NATO summit?
Here's what I can say. As far as the NATO summit, I've seen the agenda. That absolutely will be there. I know that. Every conversation that's been had between that I'm aware of, between the United States government and our counterparts, certainly mine with Foreign Minister Lavrov, now 2 or 3 times I raised the issue in each and every conversation. I am confident when President meets with Vladimir Putin, he will make clear that meddling in our elections is completely unacceptable.
I hope our president will hold Putin and Russia accountable for their aggression against Ukraine, for their support for the murderous regime of Bashar al-Assad, for their interference in our election and others. I am concerned by reports that in southwest Syria, the Assad regime is on the march and is taking aggressive action. And I wonder if I could, in closing, just ask, I agree with a proposition advanced by the chairman at the beginning, that we need to remain on the ground. We need to remain engaged in Syria in order to have the opportunity to shape any negotiations that might resolve this horrible conflict. Is it your understanding that we've sent some signal to Assad and to Russia that we won't block advances in southwestern Syria that might create now an opportunity for Iranian influence to advance closer to our vital allies, Jordan and Israel?
The forces, the U.S. forces that are present there don't have the ability to reach to the region that you're describing. Indeed, Russians have flown missions in southwest Syria over the past several days as well.
Isn't that in violation of an agreement we had reached with the Russians?
Yes, sir, it is. And we have both spoken to them about it and issued public statements indicating exactly that.
That would seem to me an important agenda item for an upcoming summit, both with our vital NATO allies and, if there were to be one, with the president of the Russian Republic.